No? Okay. So, good morning, and today we will be starting with the new topic, which is how bacteria respond to the environmental stress, correct? So, we will be basically talking about the genes that are involved and how the bacteria evolve so as to withstand these changing temperatures or change in the oxygen concentrations, or for that matter to become aerobic and anaerobic. Okay, so let us first look at temperature. Okay, temperature. All right, now in case of temperature we have high temperature and we have low temperatures, correct? So when any organism grows in high temperature, it produces something which are called as heat shock proteins. And when any organism grows at lower temperature, it produces something which is called as cold shock proteins. Okay, now these proteins are very stable at the respective temperatures. Now what happens when I move a mesophilic organism to a higher temperature? Like for example, I have my E. coli, which I move from 25 degrees Celsius to say 37 or 40 degrees Celsius. At that point in time, heat shock proteins are produced. Okay. Now, heat shock proteins are also called as HSPs. Okay, HSP, heat shock protein. And these HSPs are categorized based on their molecular weight. For example, if the molecular weight of any protein is 70 kilodaltons, then the protein is called as HSP 70. So we call this protein as HSP 70. Similarly, if the weight is 60 kilodaltons, then the category is HSP 60. So on and so forth. Okay. Now the thing with these, sorry, my laptop, just give me a minute. Proteins is that they are very unstable. Okay. They are stable only at higher temperatures. So all those proteins जिसका molecular weight 60 kilodaltons के आसपास होगा, वो HSP 60 कैटेगरी में आएगा. जिसका weight 70 के आसपास होगा, वो HSP 70 की कैटेगरी में आएगा. Okay. Now, what do these proteins do? They have a lot of functions. Okay, for heat shock proteins, which we will see in later. Okay. Another very important parameter in case of high temperatures is sigma factor. Sigma factor 32. Okay, or sigma 32 as we call it. This is also produced only when the temperatures rise above the normal. Okay. At normal temperatures in E. coli, like for example between 35 and 37 degrees Celsius, sigma 32 is very unstable. Uska half life jo hai is only 1 minute. But as the temperatures rise, the half life of the sigma factor increases to a few minutes, which then helps the cell to produce more of heat shock proteins. Okay. Please remember, as the temperature increases, the amount of heat shock proteins increase, the number increases. And why it increases? Because the factor which is responsible for their production becomes more and more stable as the temperature rises. Okay? Am I clear? Yes? Now, let us look at the functions of these heat shock proteins. कि वो करते क्या क्या है? So, there are various different functions like Let's change the color. Folding of newly formed proteins. Then proteolysis of improperly folded proteins. Proteolysis of improperly folded proteins. Third is chaperoning. Sorry. As a chaperone. Okay, so now let us look at all these functions. Now these functions are done by heat shock proteins when at higher temperatures. When at normal temperatures, other proteins are involved in the same functions. Okay. Now heat shock proteins aid in the folding of newly formed proteins, which means they behave as a chaperone. Okay. Now how do I define a chaperone? Chaperone is a protein that takes part in protein folding procedure but is not the part of the final folded protein, which means it is only going to help in folding and उसके बाद वो वहां से निकल जाएगा. Okay. Now when I say I need a chaperone, why do I need chaperone? Because when you have a mesophilic organism and it is growing at a higher temperature, lot of proteins will keep on breaking because they are not heat stable. In that case, your chaperones or your heat shock proteins will help them in folding again and coming back to their original shape and structure. Okay. They are thought to bind to exposed protein surfaces and in so doing prevent these surfaces from improperly interacting with each other. Okay. Some chaperones also help in transport of these enzymes or other proteins from the external surface to the internal surface of the cells. Okay. Now, what happens is these proteins, my heat shock proteins, will bind to other proteins and get them to their original place. Okay. Now, some of these heat shock proteins also act as ATP dependent proteases. Okay, proteolysis of improperly folded proteins. Now, for proteolysis, you require proteases. So, your heat shock proteins, some of them, at least 6 of them, behave as a ATP dependent protease. Okay, their function is to denature the protein and refold it or realign it according to the need. और अगर ज़्यादा हीट की वजह से वो improper folding हुआ है तो it is going to break it. Okay, the example for ATP dependent proteases is LON. Okay. LON. LON. So LON is a ATP dependent protease that is encoded by the CAFR gene. Okay. It is encoded by CAFR gene. Now what it does is LON functions not only during the heat shock response but also during ordinary growth temperatures. It is important in degrading the abnormal proteins. See, तुम्हारे cell में बहुत सारे proteins बन रहे हैं. Here we are talking about a system as small as E. coli. Okay, we are talking microbiology. So in case of E. coli, what my LON does is it degrades the improperly folded proteins. Okay. Now, LON is also responsible for degradation of proteins in E. coli. Also, if I have a mutation in CAP-R gene, then that E. coli strain synthesizes more of capsular polysaccharides and forms mucoid colonies. The reason for this is that LON recognizes and degrades the RCSA protein, which is a positive regulator of capsular polysaccharide synthesis. So what is happening here is, if there is a mutation in my CAP-R region, then there will be no LON protein formation. Since there is no LON protein formation, another protein by the name of RCSA will be continuously formed, and this RCSA is the reason for continuous polysaccharide production. अगर LON है तो it will break down RCSA and therefore polysaccharide will not form in case of E. coli. But if there is a mutation in LON region or in CAP-R gene, then LON protein will not be formed, thereby RCSA will be in the system, and therefore it will make the cell produce more amount of polysaccharide. Okay? Am I clear? Say yes or no.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay. So this is the genetic basis for heat shock proteins. We're not going to go into the details of cold shock proteins. Now we are going to look at the oxidative stress and its genetic basis. Oxidative stress हमने कल देखा था. For example, if an anaerobic organism comes into the contact with oxygen, then what all happens, right? Oxidative stress. So what kind of oxidative stress we are taking into consideration? The O2 minus, HO minus, H2O2. So superoxide, hydroxyl radical, and hydrogen peroxide we are talking about. Okay. Now, the enzymes that deal with these all three is your superoxide dismutase, correct? It converts your superoxide to hydrogen peroxide and oxygen, and catalase, which converts your hydrogen peroxide to water and oxygen. Okay. Now, how these proteins or how these enzymes are made, या उसका genetic basis क्या है, या when are these switched on is what we are going to look. So in simple terms, we are going to look at the transcriptional regulation of these genes which prepare superoxide dismutase or catalase, etc. Okay. So in E. coli, there are two transcriptional regulatory systems that control the production of proteins in response to oxidative stress. The systems are called as SOX RS system, and the second system is OXY R system. Okay. So now we will look as to how both of these work together to make superoxide dismutase and catalase enzymes, so that these will then react with the reactive oxidative species and remove them from within the cell. Okay. So let me first draw the diagram and then we will discuss. Okay. I want you all to draw with me simultaneously, okay? So this here is my socks R, okay, which is inactive. This here socks R, which is active or activated, okay. Sorry. Now here this here is my DNA, okay. Then this is my DNA here. 1, 2. Then another box. We are talking about SOX RS system, okay? So R activate हो गया. अभी इधर SOX S, okay? So now this gene SOX S, as we can see, it's situated in the DNA, okay? Once this SOX S gets activated, what it will do? It will start a whole lot of things. So what are those whole lot of things? Let us look, okay? Cellular resistance, superoxide stress, NO minus generating macrophages, multiple antibodies, organic solvents, and heavy metals. So cellular superoxide stress, NO2 generating macrophages, multiple antibodies, organic solvents, and heavy metals. Now, what starts the SOX-R gene? So, what starts the SOX-R gene? O2 minus, NO, nitrous oxide, and others. Okay. So, these are the things that will start on the SOX-R. So, now let us look as to what exactly is happening. SOX-R is an iron sulfide protein that is activated in response to superoxide or nitric oxide. Now, how does it get activated? It gets activated by changing the conformation, okay, of SOX-R protein. Okay. Activated SOX R in turn activates the transcription of SOX S gene and then activates transcription of about 12 target genes whose product confer resistance. So I have SOX R already, the SOX R gene in the cell. Once the cell comes in contact with superoxide or nitric oxide, it is going to activate SOX R, which is this gene. Activated SOX R gene then activates your SOX S gene, which is in DNA. The activated SOX S gene then activates about 12 different proteins which are responsible for handling all these stresses like superoxide stress, nitrous oxide generation, मल्टीपल एंटीबॉडीज, ऑर्गेनिक सॉल्वेंट्स की वजह से जो स्ट्रेस आता है सेल को, वो सब जो है उसके लिए जो भी प्रोटीन्स है वो सॉक्स एस जो है वो एक्टिवेट करेगा. ओके, क्लियर? The activated genes in the SOD A region and NFO regions are there. So the activated genes, that is SOX S जो है वो इतना बड़ा बॉक्स है, उसमें दो छोटे से रीजन है which is SOD A, SOD और फिर A and NFO. ये दोनों रीजन जो है वो उन 12 प्रोटीन्स के लिए कोड करते हैं. Okay, am I clear? SOX RS system समझा?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. The next system is OxyR. This one, OxyR. So when the cell is exposed to H2O2, that is hydrogen peroxide, then at that time your OxyR gets activated, which is again a segment in the DNA of E. coli. Okay. Now, once your OxyR comes in or your cell comes in contact with H2O2, there is no increase in the number of OxyR proteins, but सिर्फ उनका activity जो है वो increase होता है. Okay. OxyR is transcriptional activator of several genes, including the CAT-G gene. Okay. The RNA product of OxyS gene is not translated and its function is not understood at present. So basically, अगर तुम्हारा E. coli का सेल O2 minus या NO नाइट्रिक ऑक्साइड या ऑक्सीजन सुपर ऑक्साइड के कांटेक्ट में आया तो वो SOX RS सिस्टम को शुरू करेगा. अगर तुम्हारा E. coli का सेल अगर हाइड्रोजन पर ऑक्साइड के कांटेक्ट में आया तो वो OxyR सिस्टम को शुरू करेगा. ठीक है, दोनों में डिफरेंस क्या है? इन केस ऑफ SOX RS सिस्टम, the SOX S gene will activate those genes which will produce 12 different proteins which will take care of all these things. Okay. एंड OxyR क्या करेगा? OxyR जो है वो OxyR नाम का प्रोटीन ही सिंथेसाइज करेगा, बट उसका नंबर इंक्रीज नहीं करेगा, उसका एक्टिविटी इंक्रीज होगा. ओके, एम आई क्लियर? इफ यू हैव एनी डाउट्स प्लीज आस्क. ये दोनों सिस्टम्स जो है वो आपको ऑक्सीडेटिव स्ट्रेस के टाइम पर काम आते हैं. Which means if there is a lot of O2 minus or if there is an anaerobe जो by chance ऑक्सीजन के कांटेक्ट में आ गया है, तो in that case your OxyRS system and SOX RS system and OxyR system will start to function. Am I clear?
Yes,
Say
ma'am.
yes or no.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay. The reference book for this is David White. Okay. वो लाइब्रेरी में नहीं है हमारे एंड सॉफ्ट कॉपी भी नहीं है. I have its Xerox copy. So as and when the college reopens, I will give you the Xerox. Okay. Now let us look at the next parameter, which is pressure. Okay. So again, I am sharing my screen with you all. The reference book in this case is Prescott. Okay. In case of pressure, now most of us live at normal pressure or altitude, which is my 1 atmosphere. In deep seas, the depth is more than 1000 meters, so therefore the pressure will be more. The hydrostatic pressure can reach up to 600 to 1100 atmosphere in the deep sea, while the temperature is about 2 to 3 degrees Celsius. Now, even at these extreme pressures, microorganisms thrive happily. They are called as barotolerant, which means increased pressure does not adversely affect them, but not as much as it does to non-tolerant bacteria. मतलब for example, मैंने लैब का E. coli लिया, उसको deep sea में डाल दिया at 600 atmosphere, it is going to die. Okay. बट वही अगर मैंने बैरोटॉलरेंट ऑर्गेनिज्म डाला तो वो जिंदा रहेगा, उसके एक्टिविटीज थोड़े से सीज होंगे, बट अदरवाइज इट विल बी फाइन. Then there are some bacteria which live in the gut of deep sea invertebrates such as amphipods and holothurians, which are truly barophilic. They grow rapidly at high pressure. So there are two types of microorganisms when we talk about the pressure. One is barotolerant, which can tolerate the pressure. Second is barophilic, which loves the pressure. So these barophilic organisms are found generally in deep sea, in the stomachs of amphipods and holothurians. Okay, these gut bacteria play an important role in nutrient recycling in the deep sea, because please remember, at such high depths, nutrition is very limited. Okay, one barophile which has been recovered from Mariana Trench is actually unable to grow at a pressure below 400 or 500 atmosphere when incubated at 2 degrees Celsius, which means कि उसको grow करने के लिए वो pressure चाहिए. Now the examples of barophiles are Photobacterium, Shevanella, and Colvellia. Okay. Some members of Archaea are also thermobarophiles, like for example Pyrococcus. Thermobarophiles मतलब जो कि deep sea vents के पास होते हैं, मतलब temperature भी high है और pressure भी high है. Okay. Clear? Now, your barophiles are also called as piezophiles. Okay. Let me clear this out first. So, my barophiles also called as piezophiles. Okay. They generally thrive in deep sea at an atmospheric pressure of more than 500 atmosphere. Okay. Now, what is the change that they have made so that they can thrive at such a high pressure? They have high percent of polyunsaturated fatty acids. Polyunsaturated fatty acids. Now, what happens when you have high percentage of polyunsaturated fatty acids in their membrane? Is at high pressure, these polyunsaturated fatty acids cannot be packed together. See, जनरली क्या होता है, आप जैसे जैसे प्रेशर बढ़ाते जाते हो, द मॉलिक्यूल्स बिकम कॉम्पैक्ट और एक साथ जुड़ जाते हैं, राइट? बट these polyunsaturated fatty acids have gaps within them, so the membrane, the cell membrane, doesn't become very rigid. So all the barophiles or piezophiles will have more amount of unsaturated fatty acids in their cell membrane. Another change that they have made is the change in the amino acid sequences of the proteins. What they do is they have low concentration of choline and they have more of glycine. They have also changed the percentage of amino acids. So they have less proline and more glycine. Now, why more glycine? Because your glycine increases the conformational flexibility. आप ग्लाइसिन को किसी भी तरह से मोड़ सकते हो and it will still remain active. It is not the case with proline. Another thing that they do is they produce more chaperones. Okay, we had seen in case of heat shock proteins that they behave as chaperones. So in case of piezophiles, they produce more chaperones such that कि अगर इस हाई प्रेशर से कोई प्रोटीन डीनेचर भी हो गया या गलत फोल्ड हो गया, then also these chaperones will then correct the proteins और अगर टूट गया है तो उसको जोड़ देंगे. Plus they have controlled gene expressions. Controlled gene expression मतलब क्या कि randomly कोई भी gene switch on switch off नहीं होगा until and unless absolutely necessary. Okay, why is it so? Because food is scarce. As a result, they have to conserve their energy. ठीक है, और किसी भी जीन को एक्टिवेट करने के लिए बहुत सारा ATP, ADP, NADPH लगता है. So what they do is they control their gene expressions such that it will not switch on a gene until and unless it is necessary. So all these things are changed in case of barophilic organisms. Am I clear? Yes or no? Speak.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes? Okay. Now, we will move on to the next, which is my radiation. Okay. So, electromagnetic radiations, UV radiations, X-rays, etc., etc. we will be talking about. Okay. So, you can safely say that you will find microorganisms even on the X-ray machines. Okay. So here we go. Radiation. Now, what is the most common radiation that we have? We have UV radiation, correct? It is a range between 290 to 300 nanometers, right? So, many forms of electromagnetic radiations are very harmful to the microorganisms, especially your ionizing radiations, which are short wavelength radiations. So two major forms, X-rays and gamma rays, which will kill the microorganisms, correct? But again, there are microorganisms which will happily live in these X-rays or in presence of these X-rays and gamma rays. Like for example, Deinococcus radiodurans. Okay, this Deinococcus can survive in space under UV light in any conditions. And some bacterial endospores also survive large doses of ionizing radiations. Okay. So what are the changes will the cell do in order to survive these high ionizing radiations? First, it breaks hydrogen bonds, oxidizes double bonds, destroys ring structure, and polymerizes some molecules. So what is the cell doing? It is breaking hydrogen bonds, oxidizing double bonds, destroying any ring structure that it has, and it will polymerize some molecules. Okay? So, what do we do now? In case of UV rays, the UV rays are directly going to damage the DNA, correct? Because it has hydrogen bonds. So in this case, the organism has UV repair mechanism. Okay? This UV repair mechanism, what it does, it has certain proteins which will keep on checking for any UV damage and rebond it. Okay? The process is called as dark reactivation. This process occurs in absence of light and is therefore called as a dark reactivation. Damage can also be repaired using another mechanism which is called as SOS repair mechanism and REC-A protein repair mechanism or recombination repair. We are not going into the details of the genetics of SOS repair and REC-A protein repair. Please remember that these two systems will repair any kind of damage that has been done by UV rays or ionizing radiations. Okay? With this, we are going to stop for the day. Okay? So if you have any doubts, please ask.